Hey guys, just wanted to do another real quick discussion today. You see this a lot on baseball message boards, and especially on places like Twitter. I don't think you see necessarily as much of the sentiment on Reddit, but I might be mistaken. I don't visit Reddit as often, at least the baseball part of Reddit, as I probably should. The question here is whether players of the past, especially say like 120 years ago, are just simply inferior to players today, or even if there is a way to measure it. Now, there's a lot of arguments that go back and forth on this. I think I've talked about it before, and I know that I've written about it a little bit before, but I kind of like to get to know sort of what your feelings are on the subject. One thing I can say that is definitely different that you will see if you watch these 1908 replay games, or if you play through a replay of a dead ball era yourself. One thing you will notice is that the strategy has certainly changed over the years, because you cannot do today, or you cannot do then what you could do today in terms of managing especially offensive strategy, right? As we saw in this latest Reds-Giants game, it was a tight game for a while, and the Reds kept on getting runners on second base. And the problem is that if you just let the guy swing away, everybody will make an out and the guy will stay on second. If you try to force the issue with the bunt, weird things might happen. Sometimes with a runner on at first base, you think, well, I got to do something. We're going to have to do some hit and run. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There are problems like that that keep coming up when we play with these older games. I don't know if it's necessarily to say the players were better or were worse at that point in time. I think that that's sort of a subjective type thing that's really hard to say, because there's obviously no way you can directly compare them. We can talk about a player's size, a player's strength, or something like that, but even then, it's not really a fully meaningful comparison, right? Baseball is not like, say, the NFL, where you look at NFL linemen from the 1960s and you say, yeah, I mean, these guys wouldn't last 5 minutes against linemen today, because guys today are really bulked up, right? There's a need for guys who are 300 plus pounds who are really agile, right? It's a completely different environment, completely different type of game. But baseball is not really a sport that rewards size that much. I know that it seems really odd. I know that we don't talk about it that much, but it's true. It doesn't really reward size too much, right? One of the reasons why Randy Johnson was a pretty interesting pitcher is not just because he was, like 6'10", but because he knew how to use that to his advantage. Most of the time, you did have other tall pitchers in the past who were maybe not so good at using it to their advantage, or had some major control problems as a result. I think, of course, and we all think about Rickey Henderson. Now, he wasn't really that short. He was actually a little bit taller than me. But Rickey Henderson was known for being an offensive power because his natural stance gave him a very, very small strike zone, right? There can be advantages to being a little bit small, a little bit shorter when you want to get on base. That's the thing, right? When we look at those direct comparisons, it's a little bit hard to say whether one thing is better than another. But what is definitely true, like I said, is that the strategy is a lot different. When you're dealing with an environment in which runs are scarce and in which you don't get a lot of base hits, and it's really hard to string base hits together, all of a sudden, all of this talk that you have about, well, it's better for your offensive efficiency to just swing away and swing from the heels, starts to go out the window. You start to see why teams would have guys bunt. And really, you start seeing as well that the game was a little bit more exciting when you did that, because if you're sitting back and you're watching every single player ground out to short or ground out to second, is going to be a problem after a little while. Anyway, I'm real interested to know sort of what the rest of you guys think about this stuff. Do you think that the strategy was better back in the olden days? Do you think that it's better today? Do you think that it doesn't really matter? Is it just uninteresting? Interested to know sort of what your thoughts are on the subject. I will say that when you look at other sports, when you look at, for example, the NBA, you look at differing strategies over time, you'll notice that they tend to follow not necessarily the athleticism of the players. To a slight extent it does, but it usually follows what the rules are, right? You couldn't do the things you can do in today's NBA because back in the old days, they'd call traveling every other minute, right? Same thing is true for the NFL, right? You went from a game that was, especially in the early 70s, very running focused into the pass-happy game of today, largely because of rule changes that increased the passing game and were designed to do so, right? If you look at soccer in Europe and you read about this stuff, you'll see that with soccer, like 100 years ago, back when they had the different offside rule, you had teams that would be a lot more offensive because there was a lot more incentive to just do an all-out attack and not play, with men playing back and the sort of thing you see today. It's pretty interesting, and sometimes the rule changes result in things happening not the way that you would expect. But baseball is different because the basic rules of the game, and I'm not talking about the size of the bases or, the how tall the mound is. Basic rules of the game have been similar over time. And it's pretty interesting to see that there's some other stuff that must be happening that's causing different strategies to take place. Anyway, as always, want to know what you guys think. Talk to you later. Bye.